wys my bietjie julle vingers. Wys my hou jou hande dat ek 'n video maak so van jou hande.
Hoekom maar dit nou?
Ek gaan maak 'n YouTube video van al die goed wat ons bou. En jou nou wie het nog vingers verloor?
Nee, dit
Al die
halve mense het vol om.
Nee, vol. Al die vingers. Alright, so we've got these back from the mitering edges, from the woodworkers who mited it for us, the real woodworkers. We've started at one side flat and made sure we cut the straight line across. Then we've doubled up or transferred that length to the top. So we're left with our 3 panels per speaker now, and we know that we've cut them correctly. They're all exposing a little bit of wood there, they're all the same size, the same everything. So basically now what we want to do is we're going to have to miter these together so that we get this effect. So basically that's what we're after now. Before we do that, I want to cut out the holes for the speakers. And to do that, we need to use our little router, and we're going to put this edging bracket onto it. But I flipped the little edging portion around. There's a little hole right there that I want to use as a center point to make a circular jig. Before we try it on the real board, we're going to just try on a little test board here and make some circular holes. Okay, so these specific speakers that we want to put in, they drop in 4 millimeters. So I've set the depth on my router to basically cut 4 millimeters deep. And then we want to cut a circle of 16.5 centimeters, 165 millimeters. So we want, it's 82.5 millimeters. So for those of you who don't know how vernier works, so vernier, if you set it to 82, you see it's just slightly past the 82, then you follow this bottom rail there until the decimal figure that you want lined up. So if you want 0.5, you move it till the 5 lines up. So let me show you quickly. So if you look, there's 82, and we want another 0.5 onto that. So if you look at the 5 there, if I move it until the 5 lines up, there we go, there the 5 lines up. So that's 82.5 millimeters. So then what I did is I take the center point over there, and I move my router bit into its furthest position where the blade is going to cut, and then I measure that length to the center of the hole. It's still not perfectly accurate at this stage, but that's why we're doing a test first to see how much, if we're out by 1 or 2 millimeters, how much of an effect that's going to have to the speaker itself when you see it. So what we're doing, so we've got our center point, we've got our depth, we've basically taken our test board, we found the position where we want to go into. So now we're going to go ahead, we're going to mount this center of the circle to there, and then it's a matter of rotating the router around as you cut your 4 millimeter deep groove in the wood. Look at that. Perfect little groove. Alright, so we've adjusted our jig now, shortened it a little bit, so we're cutting a slightly smaller radius. This one we have to cut all the way through, because in the end we want to be left with a little lip that the speaker rests in. So there you go, so there's a little lip left behind, hole cut through the speaker. I see the depth gauge, we literally adjusted it right to where it needs to be, because as you can see we actually cut almost through to the back. Just chipped out the little pieces that were left out, left still, and let's do a dry fit. Test fit. I think we'd probably go a little bit deeper, probably go about 2 millimeters deeper, I think. But I think it looks really good, really good. So these specific speakers, they actually mount from the back and they pull through the big rod at the back, so you get a completely flush finish in the front. So we've packed out our speakers, we've decided the spacing that we wanted, and we've made our center line, we've drilled a few holes just for the center of our jig. Done the same on the other board. And now it is time for us to fasten our jig. We've set the size again, with the depth, the radius again. And so the jig pulls into the bottom piece of timber. Everything looks good. I think we're good to go. Let's cut this bad boy. There we go. Good fit. Okay, so we've drilled, we've cut our initial bevels, the first outer cut. Jack is just drilling in the center, locating holes into the bevel, because these speakers have a logo on the front. See, there's the logo. So in order for that to be upright, there's a little round cutout. So he's basically just making the hole for that little round cutout to be located. Then we know they're all going to sit vertically aligned. So there we go. There's our two front panels. Okay, so I've adjusted the circular jiggy thing. From last time, I know that if it's right up against the nut, it cuts the recess that I want. So I've made it a little bit shorter, slightly smaller radius. Now we're going to start plunging through on these and cut our final cuts. Now it's time to miter, and so we're taping up the edges. We're going to flip it. There we go, very good. And then we're going to stick the other ones, put some glue in, and then that's it. What do you think, my love?
Okay.
What do you think of that?
Beautiful. Clever, beautiful.
It's her speakers that we're actually taking apart to make this.
Eternity later.
Right, it's the next morning of what feels like day 236 of this build. So today we're going to put in the baffles. So that's the baffle for the tweeter section and the base section. We're going to put the backboards on. The top and the bottom is going to get put on. We're going to put the LEDs in. We're going to polish it up, oil it, connect it, commission it, test it, because today is the last day and tomorrow is the expo. Alright, coming along nicely. So what I'm going to do while Yak is waiting on our little test piece here, I'm going to mount the tweeter. Let me show you what the tweeter looks like. So the tweeter is a round with a little half round cut out of it. So what we want to do with this tweeter is mount it so that it perfectly intersects the circle of the other speaker like that. So I've bought, so that dimension there is 85 millimeters. So I've bought the closest fit is a 86 millimeter hole saw, and the inner hole that I've got to cut through is just about 50 millimeters. The way that we need to figure out exactly where to start this hole, because it's not because that it needs to line up perfectly to that edge over there. So basically it's going to be quite easy. 79 millimeters. So 79 millimeters from the bottom of the edge to the top of the edge, and then half the radius back to the middle is going to give us the edge. So Yak is marking it for me now. And then from there I'll measure half the radius down, and that should give me the perfect spot to start the hole for that tweeter. And it should end up right there. Right, so I've made my mark of the depth I want to cut to over there. I've measured my distance and then half the radius back to the bottom. You can see there X marks the spot, and there's a little mark I made, a little hole. Alright, so let's take that out. There we go. I did move a bit. You can see the epoxy is harder than the wood, so the bit when I started I jumped into the wood. So we won't have that problem in the real jig in the real speaker, because it's all going to be an epoxy, and we'll drill a center locating hole first. And now it's now we probably have to choose how do we remove this. And I think what I'm going to do is with a router, I'm going to set my depth to what I want, and then very, very, very carefully I'm going to eat away all of this on the inside. So we're about to glue these supports in, and just before we do that, we just clean the surface of the epoxy glue can stick to it. We're just going to use normal quick set 2-pack epoxy and feed this one. So what we want to do now is put the base in and put the baffle in for the tweeter compartment on both of them. I've taken the router and cut the area out. The problem is that it's a very, very fine line between cutting the meat of the wood away and the moment you're through, chipping into the actual the piece that you want to keep. I'm very, very afraid of this next doing it on the real piece, but I think what I'll do is actually stop short and leave a little edge which we can then just chip out by hand, I think. Alright, so while Yak is wiring up the LEDs, we got the power supply, we got the controller for RGB. It's a bit different to the other one we made. If you want to know more about LEDs, you can watch our other video about how we built our own studio lights with RGB LEDs. Very cool. We still think it's super cool. So these are RGB LED strips, and we'll get to placing them now. So while he's doing that, I'm gonna drill and sink the holes for the tweeter, that one there. So the important thing to remember here is that whatever I drill and cut now is undoable. It's like super important that you do it right. So I marked there, and I did confirm the measurements. I checked those measurements versus the one that's cut over there. It's still stressful though, it's still very stressful. Final cut. No second chances, so that's marrying up to the whole mark I made there. So everything looks to be right, so I'm just gonna go for it.
English, you're very deep at that side.
Yeah, I think it's deep enough anyway. Then the only way it can really go wrong is if I go through, or if the hole's not aligned. Alright, so I've got the hiccups, and let's see if I can get through the speech. So I've taken the shield off for the router so that I can see inside, and I've taped the vacuum down to extract the dust, and I've got my safety goggles on. So what happened last time was I went through the whole edge and then nicked the outer edge that I want to keep. That's what I really want to avoid with this one. So I'm going to go very carefully and rather underdo it than overdo it, which is very much against my personality, but we're going to give it a try. So this works great. I can see perfectly exactly what I need to do. This is fantastic. This is definitely the way to do it. Okay, so it is day 64 of this build, and it is the night which never ends. Tomorrow is the show, the expo, and it's pitch dark outside. Anyway, so we've got the speakers inside, and we're doing just a final assembly. All that remains now is we need to sand and polish and finish the edges of the speakers. This is what the messy internal wiring looks like at the moment. There's your power supply and your RGB controller. There's your crossover. And I'll film the other one just now and show you what that looks like. Basically, we've got to screw the speakers in now and fit some of the baffles. There's the other crossover. Yeah, we're pretty much done.